Billionaire CEO crashes wedding, finds ex-wife with triplets who look just like him. They called him the Ice King of Manhattan, but few knew the heartache that molded Jackson Salvatore into the ruthless, inscrutable CEO he had become. On the surface, he was all power suits and boardroom deals until the day he chose to crash a wedding on a sunlit beach in Nantucket. A single photograph in a society column had lured him there, his ex-wife, Seraphina, radiant in the background, flanked by 3 children whose features were achingly familiar. Determined to learn the truth, whether those mischievous smiles and storm-grey eyes were reflections of his own, Jackson braced himself for the most unpredictable day of his life. Jackson Salvatore grew up in upstate New York, the son of a mill worker and a mother who did laundry for the neighborhood to help make ends meet. From an early age, he witnessed how a lack of money could turn daily life into a struggle. Determined never to feel powerless again, he poured all his energy into climbing the ladder of success. By age 30, he was the youngest CEO in Wilmington and Company's history. By 35, he had acquired it and rebranded it as Salvatore Industries. People called him the Ice King of Manhattan, but they had no idea what shaped him. Behind the slick suits and relentless ambition was a marriage in ruins. Seraphina Lopez Salvatore was the one person who had truly touched Jackson's guarded heart. She was an art conservator, traveling around Europe to restore fragile paintings and ancient tapestries. Her warmth, compassion, and dedication to preserving the past had captivated Jackson from the start. When they married, everyone thought they were an unlikely yet perfect match, the cold-blooded businessman and the free-spirited artist. But the corporate world demanded more of Jackson's time than he ever anticipated. Late meetings, last-minute flights, and cutthroat negotiations pulled him away from Seraphina day after day. She wanted a partner who could be present in her life, not just a name on a bank account. Tensions flared, culminating in arguments that ended with slammed doors and tears. Seraphina accepted a major art restoration project in Paris, hoping time apart might heal their wounds or spark a reminder of why they had fallen in love. Instead, the distance only magnified their issues. They divorced quietly, both wounded and unable to find common ground. Seraphina vanished from New York's social scene, leaving no forwarding address. Jackson refused to speak of her, not to his closest friend Henry Brunswick, nor to any inquisitive colleagues. It was as if he believed ignoring the past could erase it entirely. Then, on a crisp morning, Jackson received an unexpected email from Dr. Vanessa Caldwell, an arts patron he sometimes supported financially. Attached was a photograph taken at a wedding in Nantucket. Near the edge of the frame stood Seraphina, wearing a summery dress, with 3 children who looked uncannily like Jackson himself, same dark hair, same stormy grey eyes. They appeared no older than 3 or 4, giggling around her with obvious affection. Stunned, Jackson felt the ground shift beneath him. Could these children really be his? He stared at their smiles, comparing them to old memories of himself as a child. Curiosity and panic warred in his mind. If Seraphina had hidden them from him, it would be the ultimate betrayal, but maybe there was more to the story. Without hesitation, Jackson booked a flight to Nantucket, determined to find the truth. Once in Nantucket, he leveraged his extensive connections to secure an invitation to the very wedding where the photograph had been taken. It was the wedding of Amandine Barrows, a young philanthropist who traveled in art circles and had hired Seraphina as a conservator. Jackson arrived under the guise of supporting Amandine's charitable cause. An acquaintance, the event planner Charles Michel, discreetly provided him with a pass to the ceremony. That afternoon, seated near the back of a flower-strewn aisle, Jackson's gaze locked on Seraphina. She stood beside three lively children, each holding a basket of petals. His breath caught in his chest as he noted the resemblance, those unmistakable Salvatore features. He recalled every painful argument, every missed phone call, and the day she had finally walked out. Regret stung like a physical blow. When Seraphina finally spotted him, her face went pale. Gone was the gentle, hopeful expression he remembered. In its place stood quiet fury mixed with heartbreak. Jackson felt an unfamiliar sensation of fear. All his wealth and power meant nothing in this moment. He was just a man who might have lost his chance at fatherhood without ever knowing. As the wedding began, the triplets scurried down the aisle, scattering petals. Seraphina, eyes locked on Jackson, appeared too stunned to move. In that charged instant, he realized this confrontation was about far more than discovering whether he had children. It was about facing a past he had stubbornly refused to mend. Jackson braced himself for the hardest reckoning of his life, and for the first time in years, the invincible CEO felt both hope and dread, knowing that whatever happened next would change his future forever. Jackson Salvatore stepped onto the sunlit beach in Nantucket with his heart pounding harder than any corporate boardroom showdown he'd ever faced. The ocean breeze carried strains of violin music from a nearby white arch, where rows of chairs had been arranged for Amandine Barrows's lavish wedding. Most of the guests were people Jackson recognized from high society fundraisers, real estate magnates, art patrons, and socialites. He was here under the flimsiest pretense, a sudden philanthropic interest that allowed him to crash the event. Truthfully, he was there for only one reason: Seraphina Lopez, the woman he had once loved so fiercely and then let slip through his fingers. He spotted her almost immediately. Even amid the swirl of pastel gowns and sleek suits, Seraphina stood out. She wore a simple, flowing lilac dress, her dark hair pinned back in a loose knot. Surrounded by the glow of the midday sun, she was speaking softly to three young children. They each clutched tiny baskets of rose petals, their gazes darting between the shimmering ocean and the bustling crowd. Jackson's heart seized when he recognized the children's piercing grey eyes, dark hair, and the hint of his own dimple on the little boy's chin. He knew this moment would come, yet nothing could have prepared him for the jolt of seeing three small faces that bore his own features. Desperate for composure, he took a seat near the back of the aisle, forcing himself to remain steady. His presence drew a few raised eyebrows. Jackson Salvatore, the powerful CEO, didn't usually appear at weddings for the sake of camaraderie. He scanned the throng, half expecting someone to confront him, but the hum of polite chatter prevailed, and all attention soon shifted to the start of the ceremony. As the wedding procession began, Seraphina's gaze locked onto Jackson's. He witnessed the flash of recognition, followed by shock and a flare of something that looked like anger. She guided the triplets to scatter petals along the sandy aisle, but her expression never lost that stunned edge. Jackson felt each second stretch into an eternity. If these children truly were his, then he had missed their entire existence. So far, their first words, their first steps, every precious milestone. When the bride, Amandine, made her entrance, the guests rose. Jackson stood mechanically, unable to focus on anything except the small figures near the altar and the woman he had once pledged to love forever. After the couple exchanged vows, applause rippled across the beach, and the guests were ushered toward a grand reception area near the estate's gardens. Jackson pressed through the dispersing crowd, determined not to lose sight of Seraphina again. He found her near a set of decorative columns, the triplets clustered around her legs. Each child peeked up at him with open curiosity. Seraphina drew in a shaky breath, sending the children off with a trusted nanny who had just arrived. Jackson watched them go, feeling a mixture of awe, longing, and dread. "You have no right to be here," Seraphina said when the children were out of earshot. Her voice trembled with restrained fury. Jackson swallowed hard. "I saw a photo. I had to come. You had to come." She gave a harsh laugh. "Where were you all these years? You didn't care enough to call or write when I left." Words tangled in his throat. He wanted to tell her about lost letters, missed messages, and the ocean of regret he had been drowning in. Instead, he forced himself to say, "I didn't know you were pregnant. If I had," her eyes glistened with hurt, "maybe you would have paused your precious deals and paid attention. I tried to tell you, Jackson, but your silence told me exactly where your priorities lay." Before Jackson could explain further, one of the children, a little girl, broke from the nanny's grasp and ran back. She hesitated in front of Jackson, studying his face with solemn fascination. "Mama, is he a friend?" the child asked. Seraphina bent down, gently guiding her daughter away. "Sweetheart, I'll explain later." The little girl nodded, glancing over her shoulder at Jackson as she was led away again. "Are they mine?" Jackson asked once the child was gone. In that moment, he needed to hear the truth from her own lips. Seraphina's jaw clenched. "Yes, triplets. Lily, Lucia, and Luca. They're almost 4. She paused, her expression fierce. "But you don't get to swoop in now, playing the long-lost father. They've grown up without you." Before Jackson could respond, a tall man in a tailored suit strode over, placing a possessive hand on Seraphina's shoulder. He introduced himself as Bryce, Seraphina's fiancé. Despite the polite greeting, there was no mistaking the challenge in his eyes. Jackson felt an immediate surge of jealousy and regret. Bryce calmly informed Seraphina that they were needed elsewhere, his gaze lingering on Jackson as if to say, "Stay away." When they left, Jackson stood alone among glittering champagne flutes and murmuring guests, grappling with the reality he had just uncovered. The weight of his past mistakes settled heavily on him. He had believed work and wealth could insulate him from personal failures, yet here he stood, face to face with the consequences of choosing ambition over family. He couldn't walk away this time. If those children were his, they deserved to know their father. Glancing toward the distant figures of Seraphina and Bryce, Jackson steeled himself. There would be no contract or corporate handshake to solve this. He would have to fight for the chance to be in his children's lives and win back the trust of the woman whose heart he had once broken. As the sun dipped lower over the Atlantic, Jackson Salvatore resolved that he would not lose Seraphina and the triplets again. This wedding had marked the collision of 2 worlds he once thought separate, the ferocious empire he had built and the fractured family he had left behind. The final question remained, how far would he go to make things right? After the brutal encounter with Seraphina, Jackson slipped out to the estate's sprawling gardens. Paths of crushed seashells wound through hydrangeas, roses, and ivy-laced trellises. He needed the open air to think, to process the tidal wave of revelation that had just crashed over him. He found a secluded bench beneath a willow tree and sank onto it, head in his hands. It was the first time in years he felt powerless. Negotiating billion-dollar contracts was simple compared to this. The heartbreak he had inflicted, the children who didn't know him, and Seraphina's new fiancé, who had apparently stepped into the paternal role he had abandoned. He remembered the day he first met Seraphina. It was at a charity auction for the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where she was overseeing the restoration of a Dutch old master. She had scolded a wealthy patron for standing too close to the painting with a glass of champagne, and her fiery passion for preserving art made Jackson's breath catch in his throat. He introduced himself with practiced charm, expecting her to be flattered. Instead, she challenged him to name a single painter from the Dutch Golden Age besides Rembrandt. He fumbled, half offended and half smitten. The memory brought a bittersweet smile to his lips. Seraphina had always been like that, fiercely protective of what she loved, unapologetically direct, and unwilling to accommodate arrogance. The thought was interrupted by the crunch of shells. He looked up to see Henry Brunswick, his old friend from Columbia University. Henry had come as a last-minute guest of one of the business families Jackson hadn't expected to see him here. "Henry," Jackson said, standing, "I can't believe you're here." Henry offered a quick embrace, his expression full of concern. "I heard rumors you'd flown to Nantucket. Figured it might be about Seraphina, so I pulled a few strings to get an invite." Jackson shook his head, exhaling. "You know me too well. I just found out she has children, 3 of them, triplets, Henry. And they're mine." Henry's eyes widened. "My God, Jackson, that's huge. Have you spoken to her?" Nodding, Jackson rubbed his temples. "Yes, she's furious, and she's engaged. She never told me about the kids." A pensive silence stretched between them. Henry finally said, "I remember how devastated you were after the divorce. But you never reached out to her. I asked you if you were sure. You wouldn't even read her letters." Jackson's head snapped up. "Letters? I never received any letters." Henry looked perplexed. "Seraphina sent them to your old Manhattan address where you lived before your big move. She told me once that she tried writing to you." A cold chill overtook Jackson. He'd changed addresses twice, from a penthouse in Manhattan to a new property in Tribeca, and eventually to a mansion in Westchester. If any letters had arrived after that, they might have been forwarded incorrectly or lost. Or perhaps the staff at his old address never forwarded them at all, not seeing it as a priority. "She must have assumed I ignored her," Jackson whispered. "All this time, she thinks I refused to respond. No wonder she's so angry." Henry placed a reassuring hand on Jackson's shoulder. "You need to set this right, but be careful. She's been raising those kids alone well, apparently with Bryce's help for years. You can't just barge in demanding your place. You'll only make things worse." Jackson inhaled, steadying himself. "I'm aware, but I have to try. These are my children, and I still care about her." I never stopped. A voice from behind startled them both. "What a touching scene," it said, laced with sarcasm. They turned to see Bryce, the fiancé, leaning casually against a twisted tree trunk. "Sorry to interrupt, but the wedding reception is about to start, and Seraphina is wondering if you're planning on making another grand appearance." Jackson bristled at Bryce's tone. "You've got a lot of nerve," he said, stepping closer. "Seraphina and I have unfinished business." Bryce raised an eyebrow. "I'm aware, but that was 4 years ago, Salvatore. She doesn't need your brand of heartbreak again. So let me make this perfectly clear. We're a family now, and you're not part of it." Henry discreetly placed himself between the two men, sensing the hostility crackling in the air. "Gentlemen, this isn't the time or place." Bryce adjusted his cuffs with an air of arrogant calm. "You've surprised Seraphina enough for one day. The children are confused, and you're only making things harder." A flare of indignation surged in Jackson. He recognized Bryce's type: confident, well-off, and overprotective. Maybe Bryce truly cared for Seraphina, or maybe he liked the idea of being the hero in her life. Either way, Jackson couldn't stand the thought of losing the chance to know his children. "Everything about this is my responsibility," Jackson said, voice taut. "I intend to see it through." Bryce responded with a frosty smirk. "Then be prepared for a fight." And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving the air charged with unresolved tension. Henry glanced at Jackson, worry etched on his face. "You sure about this? This won't be easy." Jackson clenched his jaw. "I'm certain. For once in my life, I need to be more than just a CEO chasing success. I need to be a father. I need to try to repair what's left with Seraphina, even if it's just co-parenting." Henry nodded solemnly. "Then let's do it right. No dramatic scenes. No confrontations in front of the kids. Talk to Seraphina privately. Apologize. Explain. See if she'll let you in." Jackson agreed, grateful for Henry's level-headed advice. Before they returned to the reception, Henry also warned him that he'd overheard some guests gossiping about a rumored business merger involving Bryce's family and a competitor to Salvatore Industries, a competitor named Harrington and Fraser. If that was true, Bryce's hostility toward Jackson might run deeper than personal jealousy. It might be business too. The revelation stirred a fresh wave of anxiety. Could Bryce be in league with the very company Jackson was gearing up to face in a high-stakes takeover? If so, the conflict between them extended beyond Seraphina and the children. Back at the estate, the wedding reception had kicked into full swing. A decadent buffet lined one side of a large marquee tent, while an elegant dance floor occupied the center. The newlyweds were taking their first dance under shimmering chandeliers. Guests mingled, congratulating the bride and groom between sips of champagne. Jackson kept to the fringes, nursing a drink he hardly tasted. He noticed Seraphina across the room, laughing politely at something the bride's mother said. Her eyes carried a shadow of sadness, a reflection of the conversation they'd just had. The children were with a nanny, a cheerful woman who guided them around the dessert table. At one point, Lily toddled away from the nanny, heading straight toward Jackson. His heart stopped. He felt paralyzed as she approached, her wide grey eyes filled with unabashed curiosity. "Hi," she said, tilting her head. "You're the man from the pictures in Mama's box?" Jackson knelt, feeling an ache in his chest. "Pictures?" Lily nodded. "Mama has a box with letters and photos. We're not opposed to touch it, but sometimes I look at it. You look like the man in the photos." His voice trembled. "Yes, that's me. I'm Jackson. We used to know each other." She blinked. "Are you a prince?" Despite the gravity of the moment, he couldn't help a small smile. "No, not exactly." She seemed disappointed. "But your clothes look fancy." He laughed softly. It was the first moment of genuine warmth he'd felt in months. "Well, just because you're not a prince doesn't mean you can't dress up nice." Lily stared at him thoughtfully, then asked, "Will you be at our house later?" He swallowed hard, unsure how to answer. "I'm not sure." Seraphina appeared suddenly, scooping Lily up in her arms. She offered Jackson an apologetic yet stern look. "Sorry, kids, they wander." Jackson nodded, rising to his feet. He could see the swirl of emotion in Seraphina's eyes, but she quickly redirected Lily back to the nanny. Once Lily was safely occupied again, Seraphina turned back to Jackson. "Don't give them false hope," she said quietly. "Don't make promises you won't keep." He inhaled, fighting the urge to defend himself. "Can we at least talk somewhere private before I leave Nantucket?" She hesitated, clearly torn. "Bryce won't like it." Jackson's tone turned earnest. "This isn't about Bryce. It's about us, about the children. It's about closure, if nothing else. You owe me the chance to hear the truth." Her expression faltered. "Fine. Meet me at the old stone chapel on the far side of the property after the reception." Hardly anyone goes there now. Relief washed over him. "Thank you." She offered a curt nod, then slipped away into the crowd, leaving him with a spark of hope. Nightfall enveloped the estate in a soft glow. The reception was still in full swing, with music and laughter drifting through the gardens. True to her word, Seraphina made her way to the old stone chapel, an archaic building shrouded by towering oak trees. Jackson followed at a discreet distance, making sure no one else noticed his departure. Inside, the chapel was silent, except for the distant crash of waves. Simple wooden pews lined the aisle, and stained glass windows cast muted colors across the worn stone floor. Seraphina stood near the altar, arms wrapped around herself as though bracing against the chill of the night air or the vulnerability of what was to come. Jackson gently closed the chapel door behind him, swallowing the knot in his throat. A single lantern offered dim illumination, painting their shadows on ancient walls. He approached slowly, careful to keep a respectful distance. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," he began. She turned, eyes glimmering with tears. "I don't know what good it will do, but we need to have this out in the open." He nodded, taking a deep breath. "Seraphina, I swear I had no idea about the triplets. Not until I saw that photo." Her jaw tightened. "And yet, if you'd bothered to check on me, if you'd read the letters I sent, perhaps things would be different." He explained about the addresses, the chaos of moving, and how he'd never seen her letters. He saw her shoulders sag a little, as though a small piece of her anger lifted. "I'm not saying it justifies my absence," he clarified, "but I want you to know I didn't deliberately ignore you." She looked away, biting her lip. "I thought you had washed your hands of me, of us. I was pregnant, alone in a foreign country when I found out, and you were nowhere to be found." The stark image pained Jackson. "The first so sorry," he whispered. "I know I can't undo the past, but I want to be part of their lives now." She let out a trembling sigh, tears pooling in her eyes. "How, Jackson? I've built a life here, one that Bryce has been a big part of. The children see him as a father figure. If you come charging in, you'll disrupt everything. They're only 4 years old. They won't understand why you were gone all this time." He stepped closer, gently laying a hand on her arm. "We can explain it slowly. I'm not here to rip them away or sabotage you. I just want to know them, and I want to help in any way I can." She stared at his hand for a moment, then allowed it to rest there without pulling away. Emotions warred within her, old love, deep hurt, protective maternal instincts, and perhaps a flicker of lingering affection. "I never stopped loving you," she finally said, voice breaking. "But you pushed me away, your work, your deals, your walls. I tried to make you see that I didn't need all your money or power. I needed you." Jackson's eyes flooded with tears. He was not a man accustomed to crying, but the pain in her voice shattered him. "I know. I see that now. I was a fool, Seraphina." A single tear traced down her cheek. "I had to move on, for my sanity and for the kids. Bryce was kind. He supported me when no one else would. But I need to be honest. I don't love him the same way I loved you. He knows that, yet he's been patient." Jackson swallowed hard. "Are you still planning to marry him?" She looked torn. "I don't know. He's good to me, to the kids. He's stable, dependable. But now that you've shown up, everything is so complicated." Jackson hesitated, the next words pushing past the lump in his throat. "If you'll allow me, I'd like to get to know our children. Even if you end up marrying Bryce, I want to be part of their lives. I want to make up for lost time." A tense silence settled as she considered. Finally, she nodded, tears spilling freely. "All right, but we have to go slowly. And if you hurt them, even inadvertently, I'll never forgive you." He nodded, heart pounding with relief and fear. "I understand." They stood there for a moment, the weight of shared pain and tenuous hope hanging between them. He dared to gently brush a tear from her cheek, and she let him, her eyes closing at the contact. Time seemed to stand still, as if the old chapel walls were holding its breath, waiting to see if they could mend what had been broken. Suddenly, the chapel door creaked open. Bryce entered, face hard as stone. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his voice echoing through the hallowed space. Seraphina pulled away from Jackson. "Bryce, please. We were just talking." Bryce's eyes flicked to Jackson's hand on her arm, then back to her. "You really think you can just pick up where you left off, Salvatore? Seraphina and the kids are my family now. I don't want you confusing them." Jackson squared his shoulders, struggling to remain calm. "I'm not here to confuse anyone. I only want to be present in my children's lives." Bryce scoffed. "You think you can buy your way back into this family? You might be some high-powered CEO, but money can't fix everything." Before Jackson could reply, Seraphina stepped between them. "Stop it, both of you. I'm so tired of men fighting over me and the children as if we're trophies." She aimed a steely glare at Bryce. "You knew I was never fully over Jackson, yet you insisted I forget him." Well, now he's here. He's the father of my kids. I can't pretend otherwise. Bryce's face twisted with hurt and anger. I love you, Seraphina. I've been there for you. Don't throw that away just because he showed up. She shook her head, tears in her voice. I'm not throwing anything away, but I need to do what's right for the children and for me. The tension in the chapel was as thick as the damp night air. Bryce looked ready to argue further, but a sudden ring cut through the silence, his cell phone. He glanced at the caller ID, cursed under his breath, and stepped aside to answer. In that brief pause, Seraphina met Jackson's gaze, her face anguished. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Jackson gently touched her hand. I'm sorry, I never wanted to cause more pain. She swallowed. For now, just leave. I'll call you. We'll arrange a day for you to meet the kids properly. Maybe in a neutral place, so they don't feel overwhelmed. Jackson nodded, respecting her wish. As he started to exit, he overheard Bryce's conversation. Yes, I know the stocks took a hit. Harrington and Fraser is making a move. We need to finalize the arrangement. Jackson's ears perked at the mention of Harrington and Fraser, his competitor. Bryce was evidently entwined in some business dealings that could prove detrimental to Salvatore Industries. The personal conflict was merging with professional stakes in a way Jackson found unsettling. But he left without a word, giving Seraphina one last longing glance. Stepping into the cool night, he felt both hope and dread swirling inside him. Hope because Seraphina had agreed to let him see the children. Dread because Bryce seemed determined to block him, and now it appeared his rival in business was also in league with Bryce. Henry waited outside the chapel, his expression tense. How did it go? He asked quietly as Jackson approached. Jackson let out a shaky breath. We've started talking. It's complicated, but there's a chance I can see the kids. Henry nodded. And Bryce? A muscle twitched in Jackson's jaw. He won't let this be easy. On top of it all, I suspect he's collaborating with Harrington and Fraser. Henry's eyes darkened. So this is bigger than you and Seraphina. Keep your guard up. You know how ruthless Harrington and Fraser can be when it comes to acquisitions. Jackson stared out into the moonlit gardens. I won't let them stand in the way of me being a father, and I certainly won't let them take down Salvatore Industries. Let's head back. I'll fly out tomorrow, but I want to be prepared for whatever's coming. They walked away from the chapel, the strains of wedding music drifting on the wind. Even in the midst of romance and celebration, a storm was brewing, one that threatened to upend more than just Jackson's reunion with his ex-wife and triplets. A week passed after the wedding fiasco, and Jackson found himself back in the glass and steel fortress of Salvatore Industries' Manhattan headquarters. Overlooking the bustling city from the top-floor executive suite, he could feel an uncharacteristic sense of anxiety gnawing at him. He had expected a call from Seraphina, sooner some plan to meet the children, but days drifted by in silence. Meanwhile, Harrington and Fraser's rumored merger with Bryce's company, Archway Holdings, began to make waves in financial circles. Stocks shifted, rumors flew, and the media delighted in speculating about the rivalry between Jackson and the rising power cluster formed by his competitor. One evening, as Jackson was preparing to leave his office, his phone buzzed. He snatched it up, hoping it was Seraphina. Instead, it was Charles Michel, the private event planner from Nantucket, known for his hush-hush network. Jackson, I've got some news you might want, Charles said in a low tone. Word around Nantucket is that Bryce is pressuring Seraphina to move with him to London for a while. Something about an extended business trip or relocation. He claims it's temporary, but folks say he's eager to distance her from you. Jackson's pulse raced. That can't happen. I have a right to see my children. Thought you'd say that, Charles murmured. I'll keep an ear out. I like Seraphina. She's a gentle soul. This Bryce character, never liked him. Too slick for my taste. Jackson thanked him and hung up, a surge of determination flooding his veins. He grabbed his suit jacket and strode out to the private elevator, mind already calculating next steps. He needed to see Seraphina, and soon before Bryce whisked her and the children away. That same night, a phone call finally came from Seraphina. Jackson's heart leaped. He answered on the first ring. "Jackson?" she said, voice tremulous. "I'm sorry I haven't been in touch." "Things have been complicated." He exhaled relief. "I understand. Just tell me, are you all right?" "Are the kids all right?" She hesitated. "We're fine, but Bryce wants me to go to London. He has business there, and he thinks it'll be a fresh start for all of us." Jackson bit back a surge of panic. "Would you really leave?" A pause. "I don't know. I'm torn. Part of me thinks maybe I should, and yet I can't ignore the fact that you're the father of my children. And I see how they lit up when they met you, even if they don't fully understand. They're curious, Jackson." He made a decision right then. "I want to see you, all of you, before any big decisions. Let me take you to dinner someplace, quiet, safe. You can bring the kids, or not, whatever makes you comfortable. We need to discuss how to move forward." She let out a long breath. "All right, I'll come, just me though. The kids are too young, and I don't want them in the middle of adult conflicts." He agreed, relief washing over him. They arranged to meet in a small, secluded Italian restaurant in Midtown, far from the paparazzi and financial gossip mongers. When the night arrived, Jackson arrived early, nerves taut. He had chosen a corner table with a warm, intimate ambience. Votive candles flickered on the tablecloth, and a discreet violinist played in the background. Seraphina entered wearing a simple black dress, her hair pulled back in a loose chignon. She looked tense, but resolute. Jackson stood to greet her, gently pulling out her chair. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, memories rushing in. "Thanks for meeting me," he said softly once they were seated. She folded her hands on the table, a fragile calm in her gaze. "I figured we needed to talk without Bryce hovering." Jackson signaled for the waiter, ordering a bottle of wine. Once they both had a glass, Seraphina gathered her thoughts. Bryce offered an ultimatum. "Either I distance myself from you and secure this London opportunity, or, well, let's just say he's not pleased with my reluctance." Jackson studied her face. "And how do you feel?" She stared into her glass. "I'm grateful for his support, but I can't deny what's happened. You're the father of my kids, and they deserve to know you. I want them to know you." She lifted her eyes. "But I'm afraid, Jackson, afraid you'll get bored or overwhelmed. Afraid you'll vanish again, whether intentionally or not." He reached across the table, gently covering her hand with his. "I can't undo my mistakes, but I swear I'm here to stay. My eyes have been opened. I refuse to lose any more time with you or them." She blinked away tears. "They talk about you, you know, Lily especially, after the wedding. She said you looked like a prince." Jackson offered a crooked smile. "She asked me if I was one. I told her I wasn't." They shared a brief laugh, a momentary reconnection that felt startlingly natural, as if they hadn't spent years apart. Then Seraphina sighed. "We have more than our personal issues to worry about. Bryce told me he's close to finalizing a major deal with Harrington and Fraser. Something about combining resources to open new property developments across Europe." Jackson's expression hardened. "That could threaten Salvatore Industries. Harrington and Fraser is my biggest competitor in property development." She nodded. "Bryce is aware. He wants to topple you, or at least keep you busy, so you can't meddle in our personal affairs. I told him I didn't want your business problems affecting the kids, but he just smirked and said it was nothing personal, just good business." Jackson's blood simmered with anger. "He's using you and the children as leverage, whether he says so or not." Her eyes dimmed with sadness. "Yes, and I hate it, but I'm stuck. I've relied on Bryce financially for so long. Raising 3 children isn't cheap, and I've only returned to part-time work in art restoration. Jackson straightened, determination in his voice. You won't have to worry about finances. Let me help. Let me take care of you all. She shook her head. I won't be your charity case, Jackson. I want to stand on my own. That's why I never tried to chase you for child support. I was hurt, but I'm not a gold digger. He reached for her hand again, more gently this time. I know. But you shouldn't have to struggle or rely on a man who's blackmailing you emotionally. Think of it as me fulfilling my responsibility toward my children. That's what any father should do. She took a moment, tears glistening. All right, she said quietly. But promise me you won't use this as a way to buy the children's affection. Never, Jackson vowed. I just want to ensure they have what they need and that you have the freedom to make choices for yourself. Seraphina inhaled, seeming lighter, as if a weight had lifted from her shoulders. All right, she repeated. Let's try to handle this together. They spent the rest of dinner discussing practical steps. Seraphina was hesitant about confronting Bryce directly. She worried about his reaction, especially since he was used to being in control. Jackson proposed hiring an attorney to negotiate custody arrangements, but Seraphina insisted on trying a gentler approach first. As the plates were cleared away, Jackson realized their hands were still entwined on the table. Neither had pulled away. A soft current of old tenderness drifted between them, like an echo of the love they once shared. Before leaving, Jackson escorted Seraphina to a waiting car. Standing on the curb, the city lights danced around them. He lowered his voice, a hush of vulnerability creeping in. I still love you, Seraphina. I know it's too soon, but maybe one day we can find our way back to each other. She bit her lip, tears threatening. I loved you once, beyond measure. I'm not sure how to navigate that now. But let's focus on the children first. If we can build trust there, who knows what might happen down the line? He nodded, filled with cautious hope. Gently, he leaned down and placed a soft kiss on her forehead, a gesture of apology and affection. She closed her eyes, allowing it, before stepping into the car. As she drove away, Jackson stood in the neon glow of Manhattan, heart brimming with conflicting emotions. He knew a battle lay ahead, both for his children and for his business. But for the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose that transcended profits and success. Over the following weeks, Jackson and Seraphina worked cautiously together to introduce him to the triplets in a safe, welcoming environment. They chose a neutral space, a children's museum in downtown Manhattan, full of interactive exhibits and colorful play areas. The moment Luca, Lily, and Lucia saw Jackson waiting by the entrance, they squealed with delight, running up to him without hesitation. With Seraphina's gentle encouragement, they took Jackson's hands, pulling him toward a giant dinosaur skeleton exhibit. He reveled in their laughter, guiding them through the displays, answering questions in a warm, paternal tone he never imagined he'd possess. Seraphina watched from a short distance, a hopeful smile gracing her lips. Every now and then, Jackson caught her eye, and the warmth that passed between them felt like a promise, one of healing and possibility. Still, storm clouds gathered on the horizon. Bryce was furious when he learned of these meetings. He confronted Seraphina one evening, voice raised, accusing her of betraying him. He threatened to withdraw financial support, to take legal steps questioning her fitness as a mother, anything to keep Jackson away. But Seraphina held her ground, emboldened by Jackson's vow of support. Not long after, a flurry of business news broke. Harrington and Fraser had sealed a partnership deal with Archway Holdings, Bryce's company. Their stocks surged, and speculation ran rampant that they would soon try to overshadow Salvatore Industries. Jackson's board was nervous, shareholders were uneasy. One morning, after Jackson had just finished a delightful FaceTime call with the triplets who showed him their new painting project, Henry burst into his office. Jackson, he said, breathless. Harrington and Fraser are making a hostile play for our top-tier real estate in Boston. They're leveraging new assets from Archway Holdings. Jackson felt his stomach knot. So it's begun. Henry handed him a folder. We can fight them legally, but it's going to be costly. And if they manage to buy out enough of our subcontractors, we'll be cornered. Jackson paced, mind racing. We need a counter-strategy, something decisive. As they brainstormed, Jackson's phone buzzed. Seraphina's name lit up the screen. He answered quickly, but the voice on the other end wasn't hers. It was Lily, sounding scared. "Daddy Jackson?" she said, her small voice trembling. "Mummy's crying and Bryce is yelling." Alarm slammed into him. "Where are you, sweetheart?" "In Mommy's room." His blood roared in his ears. "Give the phone to Mommy, please." There was a shuffle, then Seraphina's tearful voice came through. "Jackson, Bryce is furious. He wants me to sign some documents giving him control of the children's guardianship if we go to London. He said if I don't, he'll..." Her voice broke off in a sob. Jackson's rage surged. "Stay where you are. I'm coming." He hung up, ignoring Henry's startled protest, and strode out of the office, adrenaline pounding. During the car ride to Seraphina's apartment, his thoughts raced. He had been too diplomatic, hoping Bryce would back down. Clearly, the man was crossing every line. When Jackson arrived, he found Bryce in the hallway, a suitcase in hand, forcibly tugging at Seraphina's arm. The children were huddled behind her, crying. "Get your hands off her," Jackson thundered, storming forward. Bryce whirled, eyes blazing. "Who do you think you are? This is my fiancé, my family." Jackson pushed past him to stand protectively in front of Seraphina and the kids. She was trembling, tears streaking her cheeks. "That's enough, Bryce," Bryce sneered. "You can't just walk in here and pretend to be Daddy of the Year. You abandoned them once." Jackson clenched his fists, fighting to keep his composure. "You're scaring the children. Leave now, or I'll call the police." Luca, the boy, clung to Jackson's leg. Lily and Lucia cried softly behind Seraphina's skirt. Bryce, seeing the determination in Jackson's eyes, looked momentarily uncertain. "You haven't won," Bryce spat. "I'll fight you in court, in business, anywhere. You won't take them from me." Seraphina found her voice. "I was never yours to own, Bryce, and neither are my children. Consider us finished." Bryce's face contorted in fury, but he sensed he was outnumbered physically and emotionally. With a final, vitriolic glare, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. In the aftermath, Seraphina collapsed to her knees, sobbing. Jackson gathered her in his arms, the children swarming around them. A tangled mass of heartbreak and relief filled the small hallway. In the days that followed, Bryce unleashed his wrath through business channels. He convinced Harrington and Fraser to accelerate their hostile tactics, aiming to cripple Salvatore Industries. Board members grew antsy, and some even urged Jackson to relinquish his paternal pursuits to focus solely on the fight for the company. But Jackson refused to abandon his family again. He balanced crisis meetings with moments of peace, reading bedtime stories to the triplets, helping them color pictures, offering Seraphina a steady presence. She moved into a secure suite in Jackson's Westchester mansion, temporarily away from Bryce's influence. As the final blow approached, Harrington and Fraser, planning to buy out a crucial piece of property that would block Salvatore Industries' expansion, Jackson revealed a secret weapon, an old alliance with the city council, forged during a philanthropic project that benefited low-income housing. He used that goodwill to secure an urban development contract, effectively cutting off Harrington and Fraser's attempt to corner the market. The plan worked like a masterstroke of chess. Harrington and Fraser lost millions as the city council sided with Salvatore Industries, awarding them exclusive rights to build affordable housing in prime areas. Deprived of that vital strategic piece, Bryce's partnership with Harrington and Fraser faltered. Their stock tumbled. On the family front, Jackson called an emergency meeting with a skilled mediator and family attorney. He and Seraphina drafted a formal custody arrangement that recognized Jackson's parental rights and established financial support for the children. Seraphina insisted on finalizing her separation from Bryce, legally ensuring he had no parental claim. Bryce's legal threats, it turned out, were hollow without her consent. Finally, the moment arrived when the triplets would move to a new home base in Westchester with their mother, free from Bryce's intimidation. Yet, questions about Seraphina and Jackson's future as a couple lingered. On a crisp autumn afternoon, after the boxes were unpacked in Jackson's family-friendly mansion, once a cold, sterile place that now resonated with children's laughter, Jackson and Seraphina stepped out onto a balcony overlooking sprawling gardens. The kids were in the backyard, chasing each other. Seraphina folded her arms, gazing at the horizon. "We're safe now, but there's so much healing left to do." Jackson nodded, exhaling. "I know. And I'm willing to do the work, to rebuild trust." She turned to him, searching his face. "Can we ever be what we once were?" He smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "We might become something even better. We've both grown, learned from our mistakes." "I'm not the same man who lost you before." Tears shimmered in her eyes. "You fought for me, for them. That means more than you can ever know." He leaned in, cradling her cheek in his hand. Gently, tenderly, he pressed his lips to hers. This time, there was no tension, no hesitation, only the warmth of rediscovered love and the promise of a second chance. Below, the triplets noticed their parents' embrace and burst into giggles. Luca shouted, "Daddy's kissing Mommy!" Lily and Lucia squealed, dancing around. Jackson and Seraphina broke apart, laughing through tears. Hand in hand, they descended into the yard, where the children swarmed them with joyful embraces. The setting sun cast a golden glow over the reunited family, illuminating the path of forgiveness, resilience, and hope that lay before them. And so, after years of heartbreak and hidden truths, Jackson Salvatore claimed not just his legacy, but the family he never knew he had. In facing down ruthless business rivals and the ghosts of his past, he discovered that true wealth is measured not in profits or power, but in love, trust, and the unwavering bonds of family. Seraphina, once estranged and silently suffering, found a new sense of security and partnership in the man who had once let her slip away. Together, they formed a fresh start, forging a unity stronger than the forces that sought to tear them apart. If you've been swept up in the drama and the sweet promise of second chances, don't keep it to yourself. Please like, share, and subscribe to support more heartfelt stories just like this. Join us on the journey where every twist and turn leads to hope, reconciliation, and the enduring power of love.